At least, not in a way that looked intentional. There was no moment where I decided to keep things hidden, no clear rule, no single conversation that made me stop sharing. It was smaller than that. It was consistent. It was quiet. It was familiar. From the outside, nothing seemed unusual. I spoke when I needed to. I answered when someone asked. I smiled when it made sense. Nothing about me looked guarded. And yet, there were things I didn't say. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly enough to become normal. I noticed it in the moments where I could have explained myself, the second where I could have added something real, the pause where I could have admitted the truth, the moment where I felt something honest and let it pass without naming it. Those moments didn't feel heavy, not painful, not urgent, just present. I was still involved, still responsive, but I wasn't opening myself in the same way. Words came easily, but only the harmless ones, the neutral ones, the ones that didn't expose anything too deep. I could talk for minutes and still not say what mattered. Nothing felt wrong. Nothing felt urgent. It was more like a quiet boundary, as if I had been living inside my own thoughts for a long time, and then, without moving, I had shifted just enough to keep certain parts untouched. Everything around me stayed the same, but the way I participated had changed. I paid attention to how normal I still looked. I nodded at the right moments. I laughed when it was expected. I asked the kinds of questions people like to hear. If someone had asked what was really going on inside me, I would have answered without hesitation, and the answer would have sounded believable. That was the strange part, because inside there were things I knew, but I couldn't bring them into the open. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was something quieter, a feeling that some things stay quiet for a reason, not because they were dangerous, but because they were too close. I tried to treat it like nothing. I kept moving, kept talking, kept letting conversations unfold, but the quiet stayed. I noticed it in repetition, the same people, the same settings, the same familiar exchanges, everything recognizable, yet slightly less personal, not empty, not distant, just less exposed, as if I was present in the room, but slightly protected from it. I didn't fight it. I didn't force myself to open up. I only noticed that I was choosing silence, and that awareness changed something, because once you realize you are holding things back, even subtly, you start hearing your own quiet. Everything continued as usual. Time moved forward. People spoke. The world kept its rhythm. And I moved within it, aware that I was present, but not fully revealed. I noticed it in my own voice. Not in what I said, but in what I avoided. I could tell a story and realize afterward that the most important part was the part I didn't mention. Like my words were doing their job, while something deeper stayed untouched. I noticed it when I looked back on my own day. The schedule made sense. The tasks were ordinary. The conversations were familiar, but I felt slightly separated from the truth of myself inside them. Not numb, just careful. As if I had learned how to sound open without being fully seen. Even simple honesty felt different. What to admit, what to reveal, how much to share. None of it felt difficult. It just felt unnatural. I had to choose what stayed quiet instead of letting it come out naturally, and that awareness was new. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a revelation. It was quiet, and because it was quiet, it was easy to ignore, but it kept returning in the same calm way, at the same moments, as if it was waiting for me to notice what I was doing. I started to notice how often I searched for a signal that it was safe to speak, a clear invitation, a clear opening, A clear moment where the truth would fit. When it didn't appear, I didn't panic. I just stayed quiet. And that quietness changed the texture of everything. Not the conversations, not the people, just the way I moved through them and the way I left them. I didn't explain it to anyone. There was nothing to explain, but I carried the unsaid things with me, quietly through the same rooms and the same hours, aware that I was present but not fully known. I didn't force it. There was nothing to fix, no obvious problem to solve, no clear reason to search for. The quiet didn't feel urgent. It didn't demand action. It simply existed alongside everything else. I let the days continue without correcting myself. I didn't force deeper words into my voice. I didn't try to convince myself I was fine. I didn't try to make the quiet disappear. I let it sit there, quietly, like a detail I was allowed to notice. The strange thing was how normal everything still looked. People still spoke the same way. My routine still held together. My life still moved forward. And yet, something inside me remained slightly untouched, as if a part of me was always holding something back. The quiet didn't grow stronger. It didn't fade either. It stayed subtle, almost easy to overlook if I chose not to pay attention. And maybe that was the point. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Some things stay quiet, not because they are wrong, but because they are personal. They don't demand to be shared. They don't demand to be understood. They simply exist. Nothing around me needed to change. Nothing needed to be explained or justified to anyone else. I didn't need to say everything to know it was real. I simply continued, aware that there were parts of me I kept quiet on purpose, and maybe always would. I noticed how quickly my mind wanted to turn those quiet parts into something safer, to soften them, to simplify them, to make them easier to say. But the truth didn't cooperate with that. It stayed simple. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't an answer. It was just something real, quiet enough to live with, close enough to respect. And once I stopped trying to speak it, it became easier to carry. Not because I understood it, but because I stopped demanding that I should. I kept moving through the same hours, doing the same things, with a quiet awareness underneath everything, as if I was learning for the first time that you can live a whole life while keeping certain things only for yourself. Some things stayed quiet for a reason, and they stayed with me.